Hey everybody, it's Friday, Ocean Talk Friday here on the Speak Up for Blue podcast, and I am ready to jump into it. We've got some cool articles that Nathan, who's going to join us again today, found, and we're going to talk about drones and 5 ways underwater drones are helping citizens save the ocean. We're going to talk about the comment period that reopened to protect Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. We're going to talk about a shark-inspired beer and with a purpose, and we're going to talk about new miniature deep-sea shark species that have been found, and it glows in the dark. Pretty cool stuff that we're going to listen to today. And of course, as you know, all of these stories that we talk about today are open game for talking about in the Facebook Speak Up for Blue community. If you go to speakupforblue.com/group, you can join the group. All you have to do is use your Facebook account, go to the link, use your Facebook account, click request to join. I'll let you in. We have almost 200 people in the group and growing, and I can't wait for you guys to get there. When you get there, introduce yourself. Tell us what your favorite documentary is. Tell us what your favorite species is, why you love the oceans, anything you want about yourself. And then, of course, feel free to participate. I find the people who come into the group and introduce themselves on like a separate post tend to interact more. So don't be shy. It's an all-inclusive, everybody has a voice type of group. So when you get there, introduce yourself. Let us know. If you are sick of hearing of the doom and gloom of the ocean and not knowing what to do, you're in the right place. If you want to meet people working to protect the ocean, then you are in the right place. If you want to find out how you can get involved in protecting the ocean, then you are in the right place. This is the Speak Up for Blue podcast, and I am here to empower you to live for a better ocean. Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the Speak Up for Blue podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin, founder of SpeakUpForBlue.com, marine ecologist, and self-proclaimed oceanpreneur. And today is Ocean Talk Friday, and we are here with Nathan Johnson, as usual. Nathan, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am doing amazing. I'm doing amazing for a couple of reasons. One is it's getting closer to Friday. We're recording this on Thursday, but it's Friday, so the weekend's here, or almost here. Yeah, and do you have a long weekend on this weekend by any chance in the States?
No, do you?
Yeah, we have a long weekend. It's sort of like a civic holiday, so every province has, I think almost every province has this day off, but it's like a provincial holiday. But it's a big summer long weekend here. We get Canada Day in July, and then we get this, they call it a civic holiday. It used to be called Simcoe Day here in Ontario because of Lake Simcoe. But now it's just a civic holiday. But we all just go away to cottages or chill out and enjoy the weather. So we're looking forward to that. We'll still have an episode on Monday for you, though, but don't worry. Also, audience members, don't worry about that. I'm also excited, too, to announce that we've gotten our YouTube channel going again. Speak Up for Blue. Nathan, I hadn't told you about this yet. I've been teasing it a lot to everybody for the last few months, actually since January, that I wanted to start doing videos again. So I just posted 2 this week. I'm going to try and post every day in August a new video. It could be a 2 to 5 minute video, or it could be one of our podcasts as a video, which is just a picture. But if you want to listen to it on your desktop or through YouTube, you can do so. Might do some live ones within that month as well. And every once in a while, do like a Q&A as we build up a following. But when you go there, like when you go to the channel, if you don't know how to get to the channel, all you have to do is just go speakupforblue.com/YouTube, all one word, YouTube, and you can get to our channel, subscribe. And what the plan is to just provide ocean news updates, quick ocean news updates, and give a quick opinion on what's happening in the ocean. And then, of course, ask you guys what you wanted, like, how you feel about the article or what's your opinion on it. So it's always good to have that. I'm excited to show it to you guys, so I hope you guys are excited to listen to it and to watch it. The video is a lot more personal, and I have to look presentable. Can't do I can't do a video just in my shorts or something like that. I have to have a shirt on. I have to look presentable. So you're going to get to know who I am a little bit more. So, and we'll probably have some other people on when we can, and it'll be lots of fun. So just wanted to make that announcement. So I'm pretty happy this week to get that stuff done. But we got a lot of stuff to talk about, and it's going to be fun. You ready to start off?
Let's do it.
All right. So let's start with the underwater drones and how are they helping us save the ocean?
This comes from National Geographic. and it sort of just lists a few different, 5 specifically different ways that drones are advancing citizen science or advancing ocean research. And, so I thought we could just run through them real quick. The first is helping to monitor changes along California's coast. So up in Pelican Cove and the Palos Verdes Peninsula out in California, there's a drone model called the Trident drone, which is going to help local researchers and NGOs monitor that region and other protected areas around the West Coast, out off the coast of California. So it's sort of just helping to fill in research gaps. Obviously, monitoring these areas can require a large amount of resources and a lot of time. And so having something like a remotely operated drone that can at least record video that you can then process later helps in understanding any changes that are taking place, or at least tracking those changes a little bit better. Another one is out in the Mexican Caribbean. Drones out there are being used by a group called COBI, C-O-B-I, which is a marine conservation organization out in Mexico that is going to use drones to help monitor and identify spawning sites for grouper and snapper out in the Caribbean, basically to prevent overfishing in these communities. And so they're hoping to use sort of this drone footage not only to identify these areas, but also to train fishermen and the fishing community out there and help educate them to better understand which areas should be off limits to fishing during certain times of the year, or just which areas might be more sensitive to overfishing of grouper and snapper out there. A third project that's going on right now is up in British Columbia. There's a group that's using drones and also manned submarines to better monitor some of the deep sea ecosystems out there in the Salish Sea, specifically some of the areas that have glass sponge reefs, which I know are sort of a big draw to this area, but because of a lot of fishing that's going on, it's also under threat. And so they're hoping ultimately to make this area a UNESCO World Heritage Site, to protect it from activities like, trawling or other sort of destructive extractive practices. And the drones are helping them record footage and better understand this area that can be pretty tough to get to for a lot of people. A fourth really cool one is going on out in the Gulf of Maine. There's a team from Acadia National Park that already did put what are called temperature loggers, or basically devices to track temperature changes inside live mussels in the Gulf of Maine. And this is to better understand and track the effects of ocean acidification and warming. And then they're going to use these temperature loggers in conjunction with drone footage and other ROV footage to better educate people in the Gulf of Maine, specifically students, as to what's going on, what threats the area faces. And you can see these changes in sea temperature and pH out there happening in real time. And the last one is out in the Mediterranean. So there's a Swiss nonprofit called the Octopus Foundation, which is using drones and a handful of other underwater techniques to better understand the history of the Mediterranean by looking at shipwrecks or artifacts that are lost out there. And they're hoping to use this in conjunction with storytelling techniques. So one of the examples they give are graphic novels to better engage the local Mediterranean communities in the rich history that the area has. And so, I think together this all just sort of does a good job of showing the potential of underwater drones and ROVs and how these tools can contribute to marine conservation, ocean education, and advocacy work. And I think as this technology becomes cheaper and cheaper and more accessible to a lot of, maybe smaller NGOs that don't have a large budget, I think this is going to become, or drones themselves are going to become a real critical aspect of any sort of underwater initiative.
Absolutely. And this is what the Trident was designed for. This OpenROV project was designed for. I remember 2 years ago, I guess, when we first started out the podcast, one of our first like 20 shows, Andrew David Thaler came on, the guy, the editor, and the brain. A lot of times, the brain, or part of the brain, I guess, behind Southern Fried Science. He came on. He was I guess he helped provide like the marketing for it. He helped provide the development for it. Excuse me. And he came on the show to talk about OpenROV. So we'll post that in the show notes. But this is what it was designed for. Like 2 years ago, when they had a Kickstarter fund for this, it went crazy. People bought like 2 or 3 drones, underwater drones, and it was just fantastic. Like it just went crazy. And the idea, what we talked about during that interview, was the fact that it was to make it available. I think that it went for like $1,000, and you can even get one cheaper at the time, that you can make it like you build it yourself. You get the materials and you just build it yourself, and it was like under $1,000. And you can use this OpenROV. It was designed for nonprofits. It was designed for individuals. It was designed for communities that want to know more about what was happening underwater, take video, record video, and look for, like we said, spawning habitats. I mean, you saw all this here, and looking at what's happening to the underwater environment, and I mean, look at how many great things that this could this applies. There's only 5 things that this applies to, but it applies to so many more. So I mean, I just love this kind of stuff. I mean, when you look at trying to protect things, and you need data for it, you need information for it, but how ROVs don't just grow on trees. And up till about 2 or 3 years ago, before this open ROV, it was very difficult to get an underwater drone. They were like, what, minimum $10,000, I would say. Do you know what the prices were for those?
I do not know.
Yeah, I would say $10,000 to $50,000 minimum. I mean, a lot of the times you'd see the big institutes use these sort of manned drones or unmanned drones, and they're hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars. And then they started to get smaller and smaller, and now you get some pretty cool tech people who created OpenROV and made it open for everybody. And it was part of David Thaler's sort of vision, and still part of it, where he wanted access for everybody to have access to instrumentation that they can use. I think he had CTD. I think he called it Open Ocean is what he had, but there was Open CTD. He's made Niskin bottles. He's made cases for computers, like laptops, if you want to bring them out on like almost like Pelican cases type thing, but not Pelican, obviously, through a 3D printer. And it was just amazing how they can do this. And this is what it opens it up to, right? These types of data is what it opens it up to. You can find spawning sites, which are apparently really easy to find. You just need either divers in the water or some kind of eye in the water to find these sites. And think about the good you can do by finding spawning sites, identifying them, putting a marine protected area there so that fishermen can't get to there, and saving the next generation of fish, and the generation after that, and the generation after that. That makes a huge difference in, say, populations like grouper populations, where that's what the problem was, where people were overfishing the spawning areas, and they were getting the biggest fish, of course, because all the spawners, the biggest spawners, would be there, and then the next generation would be smaller and smaller and smaller. And then you've got the next, the one that I'm looking at here. You've got the BC example, where you got the glass sponge reefs that are obviously, they're glass sponge, so they're very, very sensitive, and it's a huge issue in Howe Sound. And I know, Roy Mulder, if you're listening to this, you're gonna love this, because we're seeing that they're going for a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Roy Mulder was on the program as well. He's a Canadian who's done a lot of work in Howe Sound, and to get a lot of sponge reefs and other areas that have been known for great habitats, unique habitats, or fish habitats, to get them protected provincially, at least, and hopefully eventually they'll be included in a federal marine protected area or network of marine protected areas. But now you've got extra data and extra instrumentation to sort of make it into a World Heritage Site. I think that's fantastic. That all that work by people who are interested in protecting the marine area, whether they be scientists or conservationists or both, are just adding more tools in the toolbox to get these things done. And when you have data, it almost becomes undeniable to protect certain areas, especially when you want to delineate, glass sponge reefs, to find out how vast they are, what's their spatial extent. Well, an ROV can provide that, right? So I think this open ROV provides so much so much help to protect the ocean, to make sure that it's healthy. I mean, think about sticking an ROV like near a sewage treatment outfall, in the water. And I mean, you can probably look up on YouTube videos in Florida where you can see like green water being splurged out of a massive pipe somewhere in the middle of the ocean, and you can see what it's doing. So I think it becomes interesting in that respect, but you don't. This provides an eye, and with the technology now with social media, is you can actually post that up on YouTube and show how either beautiful or how bad the environment's getting, and make more people aware and give them an eye underwater, so to speak. So sorry, that's my rant about this thing. I get really excited when I talk about this kind of stuff.
No, I think it is really exciting because this is sort of the first time that this sort of technology has become so accessible, even within, like the research community or the conservation community. So it's still not at a point where people can just go and, buy them for a couple $100s, but it's getting there, I think. And at the end of the day, it just provides, like you were saying, more resources and more tools for organizations and groups and individuals to better understand and ultimately better inform protective strategies. So, it's just adding another tool to the toolbox, which I think is certainly going to help.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it's a game changer. It's definitely a game changer especially in like near shore areas. I don't know how deep. It doesn't say in the article how deep this thing can go, but I think it's quite far. I think like it depends on the cable that it has, but I think it could be maybe 100 feet or maybe more, depending. But this is a game changer in conservation. This is a huge game changer, and I'm glad it's here, and I'm glad the people at OpenROV who are designing it, who have designed it, and all the people who were part of the ground truthing and using it. I know Andrew Thaler took an OpenROV to the Pacific in the Mariana Trench to do education for the Mariana Trench, and use that as an education device to show people, to show students, and to show local communities what it looks like down there if they haven't been down there, and what the capability is of that area. Obviously, it can't go as deep as the Mariana Trench, but it does provide insight into some of the nearshore areas, which I think would be fantastic. So yeah, this is a great story. And all the people at our OpenROV, I'm really glad now that we have case studies to help prove its worth and to show like it's actually being used. I'm glad people are actually using them and accepting this type of technology. So it's really good to see. Anyway, let's move on to the next story. We're talking about the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary.
Yeah, and I guess this is sort of more of an announcement and less of a story, but the executive order that Trump signed, officially Order 13795, which would remove or weaken protections for 11 different national marine sanctuaries and monuments. The language itself specifically calls for the analysis of opportunity costs associated with potential energy and mineral exploration and production from the outer continental shelf. So basically, it's calling for a review of these monuments that dates back to 2007 to see if it makes economic sense, I imagine, to explore oil and gas operations in these areas. The public comment period on that was extended or reopened, and now it's currently active. It went from July 31st. It goes until August 14th. So you can make comments on this executive order. It's very alarming for ocean conservation initiatives out there, because it's basically taking these areas that were already designated as sanctuaries, either under the Bush or Obama administration, or as monuments, and saying, well, now we want to explore the possibility of extractive oil and gas mining exploration activities on these monuments or in these protected areas, in these sanctuaries. And as a few California organizations out there have mentioned, I'm specifically talking about a letter that the California Coastal Commission put out there, or sorry, not the California Coastal Commission. Let me see. Nope, that's right. The resources, the biodiversity, the ecosystems that these areas support is incredibly important for the broader Pacific Ocean habitats and ecosystems out there. The possibility or the potential for oil and gas development in these areas is already low. So we already know that they're not likely to contain viable sources of oil or natural gas. Additionally, because of where these areas are located, there's not really any infrastructure to even develop or explore oil and gas potential in these areas. So it almost, you can sort of see off the bat, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to even consider these sanctuaries as sources of oil and gas. So there's a number of different ways in which this executive order doesn't really make sense, but you now have the opportunity to comment if you haven't already, voicing your opposition or your support if you want to support it. But it just doesn't seem to make ecological sense. It doesn't seem to make economic sense because of the costs associated with the actual oil and gas that may be out there. And, you know, overall, it just sort of is it's just another attempt by the administration to sort of repeal or remove existing environmental protections under the guise of job creation or economic development, when in reality, there's not a whole lot of job creation or economic development to be had.
I completely agree. I'm very surprised at this. Like, I understood to a point, you know, the Atlantic Ocean sort of opening up that to oil and gas, because I know that's been a hot topic for a long time. And I know when Obama actually closed it down, or whoever closed it down, that ended up being a hot topic back then. Except environmentally, it was more of a pro for us, a win for us, from an environmental perspective. However, now it's, you know, the Pacific was never really, and you mentioned it because there's probably not a lot of oil to be had there. But especially with a lot of, like, California, Oregon, and Washington, really the people there really value, and even Vancouver or BC really value their wilderness, and their views of the ocean are very strong. They want to keep it as natural as possible, it seems, from me anyway. So I'm surprised that this is actually happening. Now, like you said, just because they're opening it to, or like just because they want to open up to oil and gas doesn't mean it's going to happen. And that's very interesting because I just covered a story on the YouTube channel where in the Canadian side, the Canadian Oceans Act, it states in the Oceans Act that you can actually, like, the government can actually implement a marine protected area, but they can also leave it out open to oil and gas exploration. Now, does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, my understanding,
like, that's the stupidest way of doing things, right?
Well, so, I mean, a marine protected area, my understanding, is a very vague and general term. You know, you can get something that's protected. Technically, you know, it's considered a marine protected area, but then when you look at what actually it's protected from, it can allow a bunch of different activities while still being considered an MPA.
Right.
So that's why, for example, you have things like no-take reserves or no-take areas, which you wouldn't have to specify if every MPA was a no-take, but it's not. So, you know, I can understand when you draft up the sort of thing that you want to leave some flexibility, because maybe in some instances there's a way, or maybe in the future there will be a way to broadly protect a marine ecosystem while still allowing for some sort of, like, extractive activity, you know, like oil and gas or like some sort of mining. And maybe there's an opportunity to do that now, but you just want to be careful, you know, what you open it up to. And it seems like in a lot of areas, you know, when an MPA is developed, most people are all sort of on board with how much extraction is going to go on. You know, they may not, some organizations, some conservation groups may not be thrilled with the idea of having an MPA that's open to commercial fishing, but when it's designated as an MPA, everyone's sort of on the same page with it. Whereas in this instance, it seems like these areas are designated as sanctuaries or marine monuments, but it's the administration that's like, well, no, now we're going to change the level of protection that was involved retroactively, basically. And that to me just doesn't seem like a good political move, but it also, in this, especially like you're saying, in this climate, in this area of the country, you're going to face some very strong opposition.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I don't think people are going to take it lightly, and they shouldn't. And I just find it interesting though, when you, going back to that Canadian law, where if you open it up to oil and gas and people do end up looking for oil and gas there, it's different from fishing, or if you leave it open to fishing, because depending on the fishing, obviously if it's not too destructive, the habitat stays intact, right? If it's like hook and line or something like that, the habitat stays intact. However, with oil and gas, if there's a spill, you don't know how vast that spill is going to be. I mean, look at the Gulf of Mexico. Look at the Exxon Valdez. The spills end up causing a lot of damage for a long period of time, especially the bigger ones. But so that's what doesn't make sense to me. But I understand your point. Like, it doesn't mean that there's going to be oil and gas exploration, especially in an MPA, that's going to happen. But this is the Trump administration. We don't know what's going to happen. You know what I mean? Like, they're already looking at almost every marine sanctuary and are going to try and put oil, like fossil fuels, in a marine sanctuary, no matter what, right? They're going to try and open it up if it's possible to drill or explore. That's a bad thing for these sanctuaries, because there's obviously a reason for these sanctuaries, and to open it up to something like that, and let's assume that they're going to, and let's assume that there's going to be activity in there. That's a huge blow, and I feel like it's going to be up to sort of the House, the Congress, and the senators to sort of put a halt to that in the long run. But this is an executive order, so I don't know how that really works in terms of the political system there. But like Trump is all about, like you said before, Trump is all about jobs, right? He wants to create jobs, and the way he's creating jobs is through the fossil fuel industry. So that could mean coal, that could mean drilling, and if he can find a way to drill in California, I think he will do it. I really do. Or on the West Coast of the Pacific, I think he'll do it. Just to say with the numbers, just to sort of point out, hey, I've created this amount of jobs. Doesn't matter if they're long term; they just have to last 4 years so he can get in again. That's all he cares about, right?
Yeah. The interesting thing to me is that it seems, and I haven't done a whole lot of like background research on what the actual potential for oil and gas development is out there, and I don't know if it's known yet, but it seems like from the article that most people are sort of under the assumption that if there is the potential for oil and gas out there, it's going to be low compared to some other spots. And so, I just wonder if, let's say worst case scenario, the executive order doesn't change and these areas are opened up for exploration or the evaluation of oil and gas industries out there, then it's really up to the private companies to determine if they want to actually, mine out there or drill out there for oil and gas. For
sure. Yeah.
And so, even if the potential is low, even if they're allowed to do it, based on the cost associated with it, and maybe even the PR or the political ramifications of being the first company to drill in a formerly protected marine monument, there may just be no takers for it.
Right.
I mean, we've talked about in the past how some major companies have pulled out of I think it was regions in the Arctic just because it didn't make sense financially for them to do it. So I wonder if this is sort of a similar thing where, sure, maybe they could get a small amount of oil drilled from out in these regions, but based on how much it's going to take to actually set up the infrastructure out there, to set up the processes to actually sell that, and then also having to deal with the PR of drilling out there, maybe it's just not worth it to them. So I wonder if even if this goes through, not that there wouldn't be negative consequences, but I also wonder, just at least in the near term, how bad this would actually be.
Yeah, no, for sure. I agree. It's all up to whatever gets done with it, right? There's the ability to make it happen. I mean, first of all, they have to go through the comment period. It's an executive order, so I'm actually surprised they're opening up on the comment period. It must be a law in there.
Yeah, I don't know how that works, but as of today, I I checked the website. There's been about 75,000 comments on it, and
Yes.
they opened it again because there was so much interest and passion, and
Good.
people wanted more time to formulate comments and things like that. So it does seem like people are acting on this and very seriously addressing their concerns or questions about this order.
And I think that's a great thing to hear, because this is how you start to participate as a marine conservationist.
Mm-hmm.
You start to comment on these, even if you're just a lone person, or you get a community together, or you work provides comments on this. It's an important aspect of it. Maybe they'll see that they get too many negative comments and they take it back. Who knows? But it has to get through the comment period. Then it has to be approved. Then somebody has to be interested in drilling. Like you said, it could be a PR nightmare for them. They could be blocked if they, like Shell was in on the North Slope in Alaska, that was blocked for years by a number of environmental law NGOs. So there's still a lot of steps to take before that could actually happen. However, I can see it going through a lot faster when you get Trump, who wants jobs based on fossil fuels. So, it can go either way. Like right now, I would say it's 50-50 that it's going to happen, just because with this administration, you just never know. We know that Trump is not big on environmental policies or environmental law. He's working with Republicans, so it's less government and that means less laws. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I'm a little afraid to be honest, but there's so much, like you talked about this. We're talking about every marine sanctuary, but we're talking about the Monterey Bay one, and there's so much life at Monterey Bay. I mean, if you can't see it, just go on their website, and I think they have deep sea cams and underwater cameras that are on almost full time to see what kind of life is there, and it really is a great way of showcasing what kind of life is there. So we're providing the opportunity to destroy all that, and we don't want that, right? So anyway, let's move on to the next one. This one I think is gonna be a quick one, but I'm interested in trying this. What are we talking about of a shark inspired beer with a purpose?
Yeah, because you should always follow a Trump story with a story about beer. It's much needed, and it's a nice, smooth transition.
Love it. I love it.
So out in Nova Scotia, which I believe is close to you.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, it's close. Yeah, it's the East Coast. It's the East Coast. I lived out there.
The fact that I know which areas in Canada are on the East Coast and which are on the West Coast is a big enough win for today.
Oh, we're gonna have to get you down. We're gonna have to get you up here again. You went to Newfoundland.
Check this out. The capital of Nova Scotia, Halifax, has a research network, a global ocean research network that's called the Ocean Tracking Network. And they do a lot of, at least recently, they've done a lot of work tagging blue sharks. They've tagged about 70 blue sharks off the coast of Nova Scotia in the last 4 years to better understand their movements and their role in the North Atlantic ecosystem. And, to better sort of track any changes that are happening to these sharks as a result of overfishing or bycatch or climate change. They've partnered with a brewery out in Nova Scotia called Big Spruce Brewing to release a beer that's called Tag Your It, and it's being marketed as the IPA with Bite.
I love it. I like that.
There's a picture of it in the article, which it has, a shark on the beer can. It's eating a spruce tree.
Which is part of the name of the company, which I think is great.
Yeah.
It's taking a big chomp out of the spruce fruit. It looks like
it's not to scale.
No, it's not to scale.
But the cool thing is 50 cents from every sale of this beer will go towards the Ocean Tracking Network to better help them understand and protect blue sharks in the area. And it seems like this collaboration has been sort of a long time coming. The Ocean Tracking Network and Big Spruce are collaborators on or partners prior to this, and they really just sort of wanted to develop. The brewery really wanted to develop a beer that helps promote conservation, because conservation is a big part of what they do.
Right.
They're certified organic. They're located in a really unique region of Nova Scotia, and so this just sort of seemed like the next logical step for them. As of now, 20,000 cans are going to be produced for this IPA today, which is actually International IPA Day.
Ooh.
is the debut of the first batch at a couple places around Halifax, and then it looks like they're hoping to sort of expand their distribution as it goes on. A second release right now is going to be scheduled for October. But, you know, I thought this was just sort of another cool, we talk about partnerships between conservation organizations and breweries in the past, and I think this is just another really cool example of that happening.
Yeah, I mean, like, think about it. You're talking about a brewery who really has nothing to do with the ocean that wants to help out in some sort of way, and they do by partnering with the Ocean Tracking Network. This is what you do for the ocean. This is just another example of an innovative way to partner with the ocean. This is a social enterprise, so essentially what they call it the triple bottom line, where they make profit, they change the environment, and they have social change. And that's how they evaluate their business. And I think it's great. To be honest, I think every company should turn into that. But you get a lot of these sort of microbreweries and craft breweries who are saying, hey, we're going to do something about this. You know, it's not as if this company was called Ocean Brewery. You know, it was called Big Spruce. And I think this is something that, you know, we're looking at a change. We've seen beer like this come out, like, to help the ocean. And it seems like, I guess, beer breweries and beer drinkers are all about saving the ocean. But it's what I like about this is it's nothing off the consumer's back, because they're going to drink the beer because they love it. They might want to drink the beer more because they know it's going to go towards ocean conservation. I know I'm going to look out for it, which will be great to see. But especially if it's in Canada. Because I think the last time we talked about, there was a beer that was out to protect the oceans. I don't know if it was sharks or the oceans, but it was out in San Diego, and they didn't have it in Canada. But you know, this is what we're talking about when we talk about doing things. And in the group, the Facebook group, we talk about this a lot, where it's like, how can I do something? I'm a small business owner. How can I do something? Well, even if your business isn't related to the ocean, you can still help out the ocean in some sort of way. Pick a charity. Pick like, you know, sponsor some tags for some sharks, you know, through a number of different organizations. There are ways that you can help out. Right, you can have like a volunteer day during the year where or you have like different employees go out. My wife's work did this, where they went to Habitats for Humanity, where they, you know, certain I can't speak right now. People in the company got to pick which day and which area they wanted to help out, and they would go to Habitat Humanity site and they would help build a house. And you can do that with the ocean too. You know, or a lake or a river, and you can do it partner up with organizations, with your business or your company that you're at, or if you're working for another company, talk to your managers or your bosses about doing this kind of thing, and partner up with an organization, a great organization that's doing some on the, you know, field work or on the ground field work, or maybe campaigns, building online campaigns or something like that. But these are the things. This is the type of business and the type of method that's going to be is an easy way for you guys to contribute, right? As a consumer, you'd buy the beer. As a business, you're actually part of a business that helps out the ocean. This is what we really need in the future. This is what it's going to look like. It's not going to just be depending on government and ocean foundations for grants. I mean, that's always going to be there, but it's going to be added on top as the private sector is going to help out out of the goodness of their heart and use the products that they sell to help fund projects that will help to protect the ocean. And I love it. I love this kind of thing. Yeah. And the logo's awesome. The logo's fantastic.
It's pretty cool. If you can find one, send some to me.
Absolutely. I'm going to look for it. I'm actually going to, maybe I can contact them and ask if we can have them on, or maybe they can sponsor a podcast. Ooh, I like that. I like that a lot. But anyway.
Yeah, they could be the official beer of Ocean Talk Friday.
There we go. I like that a lot. All right, so let's go on to the next. Unless you have anything else to say about this.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Let's go to the last one, which I'm pretty excited to do, because the person we were going to mention in this article, Dr. David Ebert, he is the director of the Pacific Shark Research Center at Moss Landing Laboratories in California, and we're actually going to have him on the podcast. I'm actually interviewing him as you listen to this on Friday, so that we're going to have him on next Wednesday to talk about all the different species of sharks that he's looked for and found and actually named. I think it's about 11 species that he's named. So you go on and describe this. I just wanted to mention that before you went on about this article.
Yeah, so about 17 years ago, a researcher named Stephen Kajira was on a research crews off the coast of Hawaii's northwestern islands, and they pulled up this shark that it's about 30 centimeters long, which is about a foot, and it just looks completely strange. It's got, I guess they're circular yellowish eyes, but it doesn't look like they're very functional. A huge nose, not a whole lot of teeth, just sort of dilapidated looking. And they pulled it up from about 300 meters or 1,000 feet in the central Pacific Ocean. So a really unknown sort of region or ecosystem out there. And so the researchers submitted the findings to a journal thinking that this was just, a different form or a different appearance of a species that was already known. He didn't think it was a new species. But then the reviewer, or one of the reviewers, thought that, maybe this was a new species and they had to, sort of go back to square one and figure out, well, is this a new species of shark? If so, how are we going to describe it? So like you said, Stephen Kajira worked with David Ebert, and they finally were able to determine that this was in fact a new species, which, considering there's only about 450 known species of sharks, that's pretty surprising to find a new one. And it's called Etmopterus leale, I think. It's a member of the lantern shark family. But it's unique in that it has a really oddly shaped head that, culminates in a larger nose than normal, or a larger snout. They have fewer teeth than most lantern sharks. And because they live in this deep environment, they think that the eyes probably are not very functional, or at least that it uses its nose or its snout as its main source of finding food in the area. The shark appears to also be bioluminescent, though they're not really sure why. The most likely theories are that it's to help it attract prey or to find a mate. But again, I think this is just a really neat example of finding things in really unique environments in the ocean that we don't explore that frequently. So 1,000 feet deep in the Central Pacific is a very difficult place to get to. It's not heavily sampled compared to coastal regions, but the story just shows, in a group like sharks, where we think we know a good amount about sharks, just how much that's still out there that we don't know.
Yeah, I'm going to say something. We're going to link to this article in the show notes. It's one of the ugliest things I've ever seen. This is a pretty ugly shark. It's cool in a way of what it looks like when you look at it from a side. That picture on top, it looks kind of cool. Yeah, it looks like a mangled shark. And then, because even like the fins, I don't know if this is just because the individual, but the fins look a little raggedy and whatnot. Now, mind you, it was pulled up to 300 meters. But when you look at the nose of the shark, like the underneath of the shark, and you look at that nose, you're like, wow, that's quite the nose. Like, it looks like it's flexible a little bit. I don't know. But it's quite it has a lot of character, we like to say. When I teach my daughters, you never say everybody's ugly. You just say they have a lot of character, right? Because they look different. That's what this.
It looks like the face of a goblin from Harry Potter.
It does. I actually thought when I was like, "Oh, it's a goblin shark." Okay, cool.
Yeah.
But no, it's not. It's actual. What did they call it? What was the?
It's a type of lantern shark.
Lantern shark, yeah. And but I mean, you're right. It goes to show that we keep finding more species in the deep sea, and there's more to be found. And it's not just shark species, but a lot of different species, from microscopic all the way to large-bodied fish, and maybe even marine mammals. Who knows? We haven't really seen yet. It'd be weird not to discover a marine mammal because they come up for air, but who knows? You never know with the ocean. But it just goes to show that the exploration is needed, necessary. It's fun to really look at what we're what's really down there and all the different species of sharks and their adaptations. And when you look at deep sea oceans, a lot of people are like, oh, who cares? It's just deep sea. We don't really see these all the time anyway. They don't really pose a threat. They don't pose a benefit. But I argue that they might pose a benefit. there could be, in the adaptations of some of these sharks and some of these other species, there could be medicines to be made from these areas, right? That's one of the things that we always say is important about the biodiversity of animals in the ocean, is that we only know about 1% of them, and two, they could contain medicines that can help cure diseases that we're all fighting, and a lot of it's like cancer, all these different diseases that help stop bad cell growth, right? Tumor cell growth. So you never know what we're going to find. But this is just sometimes, like, when you look at it from just an ocean perspective, it's like, wow, we're still discovering species. This is a pretty cool thing, and we're seeing it as as we're in the industry, or as we're listening to this podcast, or as we're watching a video. There's new species to be found, and I think that's something that says a lot. And I love these types of articles. I think they're fantastic.
Yeah, and I think another thing to keep in mind is that it said it was found in the Northwest Hawaiian Islands, or off the northwest coast of the Hawaiian Islands.
Yeah,
there's a marine monument or a marine sanctuary out there.
Right.
So and I tried to look up the research paper. I couldn't tell exactly where it was found, whether it was actually in the sanctuary or outside of the sanctuary borders. But again, that's just one of those things that if these sanctuaries and monuments are opened up to extractive activities, and if they're not done in a responsible way, like, these are the kinds of discoveries we might not ever make.
Right. Absolutely. That's a great point. Outside of these, like inside these monuments, if these are open to any kind of extractive activities, fishing or oil and gas exploration, we may not have ever found this species, and they may have a benefit to us. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
But this is that's a great point. That's a great point. Way to tie in the last article. That's how you do it. This is why you keep coming back.
That's why you pay me a lot of money to do
that. Oh, to be fully transparent, we pay him no money. He
get my weekly 6-digit Venmo transfers from you.
I'll tell you guys, I don't even know how he gets the links to these meetings, because he just keeps showing up. Every time I open up a meeting, Nathan's on the phone. I don't get it.
I'm that dude.
I'm just kidding. We ask him back every week, and hopefully he's available. So we love you. Love all the stuff you do on this podcast. But yeah, I mean, this is great. I mean, these articles are pretty exciting. Other than the Marine Sanctuaries one, which is a little bit depressing, but it doesn't mean people can't go and comment, right? And I think that's important, is to go and comment. In that article, was there a link to that comment? Period?
There's a link to the comment. I tried to poke around online earlier today to see if I could find any easy draft letters. I know a lot of organizations and websites, if they're advocating for a specific cause or a specific viewpoint on a policy, they'll come up with a draft letter. So you can just copy and paste that into your comment. I'm sure it's out there, but I couldn't find one. So I just copied someone else's comment, because you can view everyone's.
Gotcha.
So I just copied one that didn't seem too extreme. That seemed level-headed and fair, but also firm. And I just did that. So it could literally take you like 2 minutes.
Yeah, and what I'll do is I'll search and try and post something in the Facebook group, so that people can have access to something like a talking point paper or something like that an organization is putting together. So I did see some people post a link on this on Facebook, so I'll see what I can find, and if we see something, we'll post in the Facebook group. But yeah, I think that's it for there. Anything else that you want to say?
No, let me know how the beer is.
I will. I'm going to look for these. Is it in production yet?
Today was the first day it was released, because it's International IPA Day.
That's right. And it's funny, it's just like a week after Shark Week too. Yeah,
that's got to have been on purpose, you would think.
Yeah, for sure. I would have done that.
Yeah.
That's business 101, my friend. You got to take advantage of that. But yeah, I'm going to look it up. It looks like a tall can too. It looks kind of cool. 6.5% alcohol.
Not bad.
I like it.
Helps to deal with the Trump presidency.
Right on. All right. Well, I'm going to look it up, and I'll post that too, or you can get that if you can get that in the States, or if you can get it in Canada or whatnot, wherever you're from. We'll see if we can get everybody some. And it's organic too, apparently.
Yeah, so you can feel good about it while you're drinking it.
Yeah, exactly. Right on. All right, guys. So anyway, Nathan, thank you very much for finding these articles and coming on the show and talking about them. I really appreciate it. And I think you'll be back in a couple of weeks, which will be great. Yep. And then, yeah, guys, thank you very much. If you have anything you want to say about these articles, go to the Speak Up for Blue Facebook group. If you're not already part of the group, get to it. Like, request to join. All you have to do is just go to speakupforblue.com/group, or use your Facebook account to request to join. I'll let you in, introduce yourself, talk about what we talked about on the podcast. And it could be any podcast. I don't know when you're going to listen to this podcast, but if you listen to it on like a month from now, in September or in October or in 2018, comment on the Facebook group when you join, because we'll go back to it. So we always like to hear from people. So go to speakupforblue.com/group. Anyway, Nathan, again, thank you very much for finding these articles and coming on the show and talking to us about it. And everybody else, thank you very much for listening. We really appreciate it. And don't forget of our YouTube channel. Go to speakupforblue.com/YouTube, and you can get access to our channel. It's free, of course. It's YouTube. Everything's free on YouTube. And subscribe. Help us grow that following, grow that community. Comment on the videos. That's really the most important. I love to see the comments, and I will reply to them when I get around to it, which is usually quick as possible. So yeah, go to speakupforblue.com/YouTube, all one word. Subscribe to that channel. Watch it. Love you guys. Thank you very much for listening. Happy Friday and happy conservation.